Renters all across the country are starting to do things that they've never done before. They're moving states, living with roommates again, even moving back in with their parents. And if this trend continues, it could completely reshape the housing market by the end of this year. But let me ask you something. Have you checked rent prices lately and immediately shut down your laptop in the website like it personally insulted you? Because all across America right now, these rent prices are climbing fast. So fast that millions of renters are having to get creative. And by creative, I mean things like living with their roommates again, moving states, or discovering that apparently your couch can function as a bedroom. We're actually going backwards. But behind the jokes, there's actually it's a serious shift happening in the American housing market. And the way that renters are adapting this year might surprise you. Over the past few years, rent across the United States has exploded. And in many cities, prices jumped 20, 30, and even 40%. But meanwhile, wages, they've been moving slower. More like a polite stroll. So renters across the country have started doing something interesting. They're changing how and where they live. And some of these survival strategies are reshaping entire cities. And the biggest shift happening right now is something economists call the Great Rental Adjustment, which is just a fancy way of saying that people are picking up and moving somewhere cheaper. Now let's take part one here, moving to cheaper cities. One of the biggest ways that renters are surviving this affordability crisis is by relocating. People are leaving expensive cities like New York and LA and San Francisco, and they're heading towards smaller cities, smaller cities where rent is lower. Places like Oklahoma, Louisiana, Tampa. Cities that fly under the radar are suddenly seeing huge population increases, because when your rent jumps to $3,000 a month, that smaller city with $1,200 apartments is starting to look very, very attractive, even if the local nightlife consists of one bar and a suspicious looking taco truck sitting out front. Now let's look at the return of the roommate. Another big trend making a comeback are roommates. And not just colleagues or students, we're talking professional people in their 30s, even people in their 40s with children. Basically anyone who opened their rental renewal notice said absolutely not. Living with the roommates used to feel like a temporary phase of life. Now for many people it's becoming a long-term financial strategy, because splitting a $2,800 apartment suddenly feels a lot more reasonable. And of course, this means negotiating things like who buys toilet paper, who cleans the kitchen, and why someone's mysterious leftovers have been in the fridge since 2021. But the next survival strategy that renters are using to change the entire neighbourhoods is something that used to be extremely rare. Moving back home with your parents. More renters are moving back home with their family, and not just briefly, sometimes for years in fact. Millions of Americans in their 20s and 30s are currently living with parents and relatives, not because they want to, but because financially it just makes sense. If rent is $2,000 a month and living at home costs zero, well, that math becomes pretty convincing. May not be fair on your parents, but it does. And of course the downside is you're 30 years old and someone is still asking if you've eaten vegetables that day. Now, moving further from the cities that you want to be in is another big trend that is happening, and it's called rent stretching, which basically means people are moving further away from the city centres instead of living downtown, where people are choosing suburbs or even towns an hour away. Yes, the commute might be longer, but when the alternative is paying an extra $1,000 a month, suddenly that morning drive seems so bad. Plus, you might even get something rare in big cities today, which is space. Actual space. Maybe even a backyard, which is starting to feel like a luxury product. But the most surprising strategy that renters are using might be the one that economists say could change the housing market entirely. And that's when renters just moving less. Many renters are simply just staying put. Even if they don't love their apartment, even if it's small, even if the neighbours upstairs appear to be practicing bowling at midnight, because moving has become expensive. There's so much industry for it now in competition. Deposits, moving trucks, application fees, higher rent somewhere else. So instead of upgrading apartments, many renters are just choosing stability, which is something that landlords are starting to notice also. So, the truth to me anyway is that renters across America are adapting. They're moving cities and finding roommates, living with family, or just staying put longer than they ever did before. But all of these strategies point to one big reality, is that housing affordability has become one of the biggest economic pressures in the country. And now renters respond to that pressure, or how they will respond to that pressure will shape the housing market for years to come. But now I'm curious, if you're renting right now, what changes have you had to make, if any? Did you have to move city, get in a roommate? Or are you just hoping your landlord forgets to raise the rent this year? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoy these kind of breakdowns about life or whatever, and anything across the United States, subscribe to the channel, which is 50 States of You, because there's a lot more coming.
Watch for amenity fees that feel like a second rent payment. Sauna you won't use. Co-working that closes at 6 p.m. Mystery tech package. Mandatory telecom bundles are another tax in disguise. Steep annual rent bumps beyond guideline because new build exemptions allow it. If they won't cap renewal increases in writing, you're volunteering for a surprise later. And those teaser rates? If the discount lives only for 3 months and then you get a balloon payment, you're not saving. You're financing their lease-up. Underwriting chatter is blunt about 2026. Rents are likely to drop a little bit more in 2026, with models several hundred basis points off in the front end. And then, in the back end of that model, as you get into 28, 29, you're going to see outsized rent growth. Translation you can use today. Target 12 to 24-month leases during stabilization. Lock the soft period and bridge into the upswing without eating the jump. Here's how you talk at the tour. Ask for the net effective rent in writing, not just the sticker minus free months. Request the stabilization timeline. What occupancy are they targeting by when? Then trade. No car? Swap the parking spot for lower rent. Need storage? Ask for a cage included. Push for simple upgrades, blackout blinds, a better fridge, even a bike rack. And the big ask? Write a renewal cap into the lease now. If they want you day one, they'll consider it. Where to hunt first? Calgary leads, fast approvals, active operators, and enough new supply to create real lease-up pressure. Then Toronto, Edmonton, Ottawa in that order. Be cool in Vancouver. Softer condo pre-sales create noise, but approvals friction means fewer true PBR steals, so don't chase ghosts.